In modern fiction, especially genre fiction, the protagonist is often just a player in a game whose moves are predetermined. Call it the three-act structure, call it the hero's journey, but an unfortunate amount of today's stories are built around the main character discovering their heroic nature and fighting the bad guys, with the end finding that character victorious. This doesn't always involve a huge battle. The victory can be getting the girl or saving the town, and the journey can be a lot of things. For example, someone learns to be less uptight, or learns to embrace a more ordered life, or learns to be less fearful. However, victory does seem to be the endpoint of the huge majority of stories told. My question is, does it have to be that way? I'm Matchstick. I'm a fiction writer, and if you like this video, there's a newsletter you can subscribe to that comes out when a video gets posted, because we all know YouTube's subscription system is a joke. Anyway, I've had an interesting life and I've had quite a few victories, and I'm proud of the battles I've won. But as far as experiencing them, the fights themselves were not fun. Victory is inherently a result of something being bad and then becoming good. And there's a lot of bad in the world today, so do we really need to be focused on problems in fiction, even if the end goal is solving them? I have numerous issues with conflict-based storytelling. For one thing, in an unfortunate amount of stories, a victory for one person involves a loss for another. That's called a zero-sum situation, and that type of thinking has had an extremely negative effect on our world today. And I have no doubt that its normalization in fiction is one cause of its widespread adoption. For another thing, why the hell would we want to focus on conflict? Is suffering really what we want to spend our free time watching or reading? In an ideal world, wouldn't we be focused on what we fight wars for and not the wars themselves? But there's a snag here. We don't exactly have a system in place to write about other forms of happiness, because that's what victory is supposed to be. We've been through hell and now we're happy. Or our protagonists probably have PTSD from their battles so their kids can be happy, but that's neither here nor there. At this point, I'll insert a paraphrase quote here that I love. If you want to build a ship, don't start by teaching shipbuilding. Teach people to yearn for the ocean. Basically, the idea is that if you have a destination, the key is to focus on getting there. If you want an outcome enough, the means to make it happen will come together eventually. And so I present two forms of happiness that I think are well worth exploring as end goals for fictional stories. First is a sensation that is hard to find these days, as everything has been written about in 5 languages all over the internet. The word itself has a negative connotation, so bear with me as I define it. The word I'm talking about is discovery. No, I'm not advocating writing about Christopher Columbus or any of those absolutely terrible people. The age of discovery is 100% not what I mean by the word. And I also don't mean stumbling on a food that's new to you, but known to millions of other people, and you making a post about it like you're the first person to try it. That is not it. The discovery I'm talking about only really works when there's an unknown, which, as I said, is a rarer thing to stumble upon today than it was in the past. What happens when you blah blah blah? Oh, there's a video and 10 blog posts about it. The fiction is about dreams, and fantasy especially can create worlds that people want to experience. Why not write about a character who comes into a new dimension and decides to stay there or something? Or someone who discovers a new way to look at their world. I think anyone that has traveled has experienced this, and by that I mean anyone that has visited a very, very different culture from their own. I'm not talking about a Canadian going to the USA or someone from Japan going to South Korea. Yes, there are differences between Spain and Portugal, but there are a lot more similarities between those countries than there are between, like, Vietnam and South Africa. And when you put yourself into another culture, one thing you find out is that you learn a lot about yourself and where you come from. That's kind of the point. You see yourself through the lens of another society when you travel, a phenomenon that has resulted in some of my personal favorite memories. Why not write about that? Another experience I would suggest people write about is related to chance, and that would be the ecstasy of finding something you've been looking for forever, or finding something you didn't know you wanted and finding it absolutely randomly. I spent decades making music from and collecting records, and man, I have a ton of stories in that vein. For example, I pulled over to get gas once and noticed a thrift store next door, and that place happened to randomly have a room full of LPs out back, where I found something rare I thought I'd never find in the field. I'm not sure exactly how one would convey that feeling in a story, but those are great memories, ones I'd prefer to experience again over any sort of fight and victory. And there are definitely others. Satisfaction, for one. Getting away with stealing might be another, although that one's sort of been explored. I don't know. Anyway, that's some food for thought. There's a whole world of experiences besides victory out there, and it's about time writers rediscovered them. Good luck and peace.